And we're back, and we have Morgan David Jones from Jupiter's Legacy on with us. Morgan, how you doing, man?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Oh, please, thank you for coming on, man. I just finished Jupiter's Legacy, and I am a giddy little school kid right now because I thought it was a great show. And your character in particular was one of my favorites, the comic relief, I must say.
Yeah, he's great. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. I love he zapped his penis off just for giving him the wrong look. I was like, so good.
It's awesome because I didn't realize how much the show needed or how much we were the comic relief at all. Even when we were reading it and meeting other cast members, until we watched it, you're like, oh, and this like it really kind of fit perfectly. So it was a pleasant surprise because we hadn't seen any of it to sit and watch it live with everyone and just hope that it actually worked out to be okay.
Yeah, I think it was a very necessary contrast because like the main group of heroes is very serious and kind of real, and then you guys are kind of like that the odd bunch that has these little quirks and it's like makes it fun. So I loved it.
I think a few people have called us like the Guardian of the Galaxy kind of type superheroes. We're just a band of misfits that are kind of drunks and alcoholics and just like absolute all over the place, which kind of makes them more endearing because all the typical superheroes are just you know, they're talking about the code and stuff, and we don't give two shits,
Hell yeah! And every scene seems to be revolved around shots that you like to freeze up before you guys go. So that was so cool.
Yeah, I love the drink. It's true, true Australian and true to Morgan. I am a big drinker.
Hey, there you go. And to Jack Frost, I guess. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We got a couple questions we want to run through just to kind of talk about you and your role and what you're doing in the industry. So our first question we typically like to ask our guests is comic book themed. Is what's your origin story, man? Where you come from? How did you get to where you are today?
So, as in for me, Morgan, my life.
Yeah.
So I'm Australian, originally Australian, born and bred. Grew up there, and I got cast in a really big theater production with like Cate Blanchett. I don't know if you and Joel Edgerton.
Oh,
and we traveled the world. We went to Washington D.C. We went to New York, and I was 26 at the time, and I was like on the back of doing a show that took me around the world. I was like, I kind of wanted to make that my big transition to move over to North America. And as much as I love the States, I think it's fantastic. I didn't, because of the Commonwealth in Australia and Canada, we can live so easily. We can get a visa. We can, so I don't have to just be stuck in one place. So I chose to go to Vancouver, which is fantastic. And I love Vancouver, but it's a little small for me. And Toronto, I've been here for 6.5 years, and it's probably the best I've ever dreamt of. The work that I've had, the opportunities, and the people I've met, and the stuff I've worked on. I don't think I would have ever had that opportunity elsewhere. So, so that's kind of my travel over to where I am right now.
Very cool, man. Cate Blanchett, that's big stuff. Did you go to school for acting or anything like that?
I did, yeah. So I was a really shy kid, and my mom, which I'm definitely not a shy person now, but my parents put me into acting class, just like drama class outside school, to kind of break me out of my shell a little. And I think, I guess they didn't really want that, but I came back and was like, oh, I'm going to be an actor when I was like 11. And and so they were like, oh, here we go. But I fell in love with it. And so I auditioned for all the acting drama schools when you finish grade 12. And I got into a really big school over in Perth. The one, it's called WAAPA, Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts. Hugh Jackman's probably the biggest person that's gone through that school.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. You went to school with Wolverine. I see you.
Well, I didn't go to school with him. I wish. I'm not old. So I went and studied there for 3 years, and then I came back, and then came back to Sydney, and then just worked and did the grind. I mean, everything's constant grind, right? So I mean, every city you're going to have to push and push, and then you get work for a good amount of time, and then it disappears. Like right now, I understand that we're riding this wave with this show coming out, and I've got a film that's out as well, and you're like, this is kind of crazy, but at the same time, there was a long time of my life that I hadn't had anything else going on. So you have to ride that wave. But
yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, Spiral, right? I saw you're in Spiral.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a huge film. Yeah, I mean, it's taken them to now like $1 billion in their franchise. To be honest,
oh my God,
there's a lot of reviews out there that say starring Chris Rock, Samuel L. Jackson, and Morgan David Jones. And it's unfortunate because I'm only in the movie for one scene, for like maybe 4 lines. But someone wrote an article because they had looked it up on IMDb, and my IMDb was so high that they thought I was the lead role. So now there's like 25 or 30 articles saying that starring, and I'm like, oh my god, like literally you'll blink and you miss me. You won't even like I'm some random pop. But I'm like, I'm gonna pretend that I'm a Hollywood man.
That's so amazing. You're right there next to Samuel L., dude. That's hilarious.
Like, when do you ever get that chance? So I've screenshotted every single article and highlighted it, and I'm like, that's gonna keep that to the day I die.
I would do the exact same. They'd be framed and on my wall in like a mosaic already.
Exactly.
So I love it, dude.
Exactly. No one will remember anyway. So you're just like, yeah, I was that dude. I was that dude in the background over there.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but I plan
great.
on seeing it, and I'll be keeping an eye out for the
Yeah,
third
same
main
here.
lead now. So I'm excited for that.
If you see a cop bleeding, that's me. It's me.
All right. Keep an eye out. Saw's like my wife's favorite franchise too. So I'm not a big horror person, but she gets to suffer through my torturous movies, such as comic book stuff. Now I get to, and anytime she gets to have me through there, with her stuff, I get to. So we'll be enjoying that as well. So
force each other. It's great. I mean, I've heard it's amazing. So hopefully you won't have to be put through too much torture. But
it's okay. It's okay.
Well, hopefully there's a lot of torture. I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
it's all.
I like it. So can you walk us through how you became, Jack Frost? I mean, in the comic books, it doesn't. I mean, I've read up to about 75%, and he doesn't show up till much later. So, I mean, you're showing up in episode 3, right? So, walk me through how you got that, Jack Frost and everything.
All right. So, well, I mean, obviously, one of the greatest things about Jupiter's Legacy is obviously being filmed here in Toronto. What happens with a lot of American productions, when you guys come up here to Canada, obviously there's a percentage of how many artists and creatives behind and in front of the screen that they want to have as locals. But they really made a point of casting as much as they possibly could out of Toronto. So that was really fantastic for us at Cave, because a lot of those lead roles are based here in Toronto. And so first of all, I got an audition. I was obviously told it was Jack Frost for Jupiter's. I knew that we knew the breakdown of that they were going to be part of a gang, kind of really were tied to Hutch and Chloe, and they really wanted it to be multicultural in that group. So that's why there's Portuguese, Venezuela, and then they wanted my character to be either Australian or South African, and they really wanted it to be a natural person's accent. They didn't want anyone putting anything on. So I knew that. I was like, okay, this is kind of. Also, the character description is a bit goofy, a bit silly. He's a bit of an alcoholic. I was like, it just ticks every single box that is labeled Morgan David Jones. So I was like, I think I've done this. So I went in and we just had one audition. And about a week later, I got a phone call saying, would I dye my hair white? Would I be okay doing that? And we said yes. And we found out, we booked it. We booked it like 2 years ago, and so we didn't start filming until like 4 or 5 months later. So we got cast really quite early, especially with television. You usually get cast and then shoot about 3 weeks later. So to wait 4 or 5 months to get a go to be on set was, it was exciting, but took a little while. So it was amazing. It was the fastest role that I've ever booked. One audition, no callback, no talking to a director, no talking to anyone, and you just book it. You find out you got it, and then you're on set meeting everybody. So. It was a bit of a whirlwind, to say the least.
Well, it makes sense. They wrote the role for you. It sounds like so. All you need is one audition to make sure you got a pulse. It's like, yep, he's alive. All right, let's get him on.
That's it. It's probably only one Australian here now. In your comment about the comics, so Jack Frost and like Neutrino and Shockwave don't actually come in until later in the series, in the comic book series. And the reason why they wrote us in, obviously they wanted to introduce Hutch in a different kind of way, and they needed him to have that kind of like circle of childhood friends. And then obviously, not to ruin it for anybody else, but those who have read the comics, you understand why we are brought back. And there will be a little bit more of a history with us, obviously knowing Chloe, having fought Chloe, obviously knowing Hutch really, really well. So they're really trying to develop that side of the story, which I think was kind of interesting because ultimately season 1 doesn't exist for us in the comics. We have so much to do later on. So hopefully hopefully they keep renewing us so we get to play in that kind of world. But yeah, I think they're just trying to plant the seeds. Mark Miller always talks about this being his like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones kind of version of comics. So he like this, it spans 100 years. There's so many characters, and it's all convoluted and they're all mixed in some way. So I think it's great that they're just kind of planting a little seed now, and it's insane how much people have loved it, and that talk about Jack's van and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. You had no idea.
Jack's van is kick ass, dude.
yeah, I want him to
I
get
want
it
that
back.
van. You wanted in the show too. You were pissed.
I know. It should be mine. It should be in my contract, man.
Amen, brother. What kind of like highlights can you reveal that you experienced on set? Like I saw you had some cool action scenes. Like were you a part of those stunts with the car crash? Like what was your highlights? What were your favorite moments?
Oh yeah. So I've never worked with a green screen before. So we did the outside fight scene was one of our second day on set. And then we actually did the inside of the van, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks later. But it was insane. It was right downtown in the middle of Toronto. Our call was like 11 p.m. and we went until like 11 a.m. So we shot overnight, and it was massive. Like it's the biggest films that I've ever seen. It's not only have you got like the first team and the second team unit, which you usually have, but then they had the whole special effects team there as well. And so you had the amount of people on that set I've never experienced. And all the moving parts, and we're just these tiny little pieces that everyone puts together and then has to like make a show out of it. But that was insane to be able to create that kind of world. We had fight choreographers who kind of created everything for us, and then everyone had a stunt double that did things. Not that I think you could see any of the stunt doubles. When I look at it now, they've kind of cut that sort of sequences out. But yeah, that was amazing. But then when we got into the green screen, was so fun because we were in the van and they had us on hydraulics. And so we were actually half tilted, and then we'd like have to flip and stuff like that. And so I spent 11 hours of that day screaming in pain as Jack. And it was like my voice was like probably terrible acting. It's horrible that I ripped my voice, but it was just hours of screaming in that van. But that was one of the most enjoyable days on set I've ever had in my entire life, because you're just literally getting paid to play the superhero and screaming, and yeah, that makes sense.
That's a lot. It's like you went to Disney World for 11 hours, like around Space Mountain.
Universal Studios. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
that's awesome.
Pretty awesome. It could be a new ride. It could be Jumpin' Jack's van.
Jumpin' Jack. He knows a kind of name. Sign me up. You get a very big wound on your arm. That's the only downfall,
Yeah, that's a slight downfall.
Yeah. Speaking of the wound, I'm always intrigued of how the special effects, particularly now, CGI and everything kind of changes a little bit. But I saw you kind of the process for your big old gash on your arm. I mean, what's that process like? I mean, I know I've heard it taken, actors when they do like a full body suit or something, amounts of time. But what was that like for you?
For me, it was only a couple of hours, so that was nothing. And I just had to sit there and they painted it. But for people who are in the full body, that would take a long time. But for my arm, they had done a mold of my arm, and they would create a few different versions of the wound, because some of them had to be open, some were like half like sewn up, and the others were fully sewn up. So they would just like stick it on slowly and kind of integrate it into your skin. And then they're literally artists. They go there with paint and they paint the color of your skin onto this like prosthetic wound, and then they fill in the wound with black and then ash and like fake blood, and they literally paint this disgusting wound. And then when you're on set, they climb on top of you and they keep adding like wet blood, and they get things to ooze out of it and stuff like that. So that is amazing. I mean, I just sat there and it looked kind of cool. I didn't have to do anything for it, but the way that they do it is insane. Like they're just talented artists, and it's amazing when you think of a makeup artist or special effects. They literally are painters. They just paint this kind of story that they want to tell on your arm. And I also did it for Spiral, not to ruin it for you, but I had to go in and
that's fine.
A full day.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's a minute. I'm not. But
hey, third lead here. Come on now.
I am the third now, man.
You're the third star on there. We're gonna claim that as well on our.
There you go. You think I could get some royalties for it too?
I
We'll
think
work
you
on
should.
it. Get it. We'll get it done.
So in Spiral is your arm as well? Same
In
thing?
the Saw, it's also but it's a different part of my arm, but it is also my arm. And so I had to go to a studio outside of Toronto, and I sat in a cast, and they kind of do the whole mold, and then they cut it off you. And it would that was like about 4-hour process to sit and let it dry, and then they pull it out slowly, and then they create a fake arm, and so then my entire arm for the film is fake. But what was cool is because there was gashes, and so they had to have little hoses with blood coming out, so they were controlling how much blood would come out of my arm at a
Oh,
time.
wow.
And I don't even know if it makes the film, to be honest. But that was
You haven't
really
seen
cool.
it?
No, I haven't seen it. We don't get to. We don't ever.
You
get
haven't
any-
seen your own movie?
No, man.
Oh,
I was in a film once, and my sister was in London, and she's like, "Oh, Lord, I just saw you in the film." And I was like, "It's not even out where I am, so we haven't like." Sometimes you're the last to see it, and everyone else is like, "Oh, I saw it." Yeah. So no, not at all.
Well, it sounds like in Toronto, everything's a little bit behind right now with the pandemic. You're still on lockdown.
This is where I'm living, and we cannot leave the house. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. But in another week and a half, we'll be outside, so we can't wait.
There you
Good.
go. And it looks like, if you can measure, it looks like a nice place to live in the background. So could be worse, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. We've done well.
So when it comes to actors, I've heard stories of like people that have like, you know, the method actors, and they have like certain rituals or whatever they prepare. Is there anything you do in particular when you're preparing for a role?
I'm definitely not a method actor. It's not something we did that at drama school. We learned everything in that kind of way. I need to have a separation from myself and the character. I can't like live as that character for months on end. I would go a little bit crazy in that way. Things I
Maybe a
do.
lot of shots.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be a little bit more on my deathbed. But no, I think personally what I do is I do find the similarities that I have, and I write them all down, and I kind of create a story out of that, and then I try to find the things that I have that are so polar opposite, and then I try to figure out why I do the way I do it, and why they would answer the complete opposite, and then try to figure the most interesting way around that, because sometimes the first answer is not the most interesting, it's the most obvious sometimes. So you're just like, well, what about if I flip it upside down and try something different? So that's a kind of a way that I get into a character and try to see things differently, especially like breaking down a script for an audition. I work with a lot of actors and coach, and I'm like, you know, everyone's got the same scene right now. Everyone's going to probably interpret it the same similar way in front of you. So what would you do if you could just do something slightly different at a couple of beats to really just snap casting's attention? And it really does. That's what books you the role, because people are seeing 15 people the same thing, and you just do something slightly different. So that's what I try to do with all my roles is where can I do something so different but still in line with that character? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like you get granular with your approach. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
sometimes.
very intriguing. It's so cool to see this. I mean, we've been, you know, as a comic book world, we've kind of only dove into the acting with and interviewing actors, and I mean, we do artists or even writers, and you know, hearing their process, and I love hearing in your process. And I mean, my next question was like, what's the best part about being in the movie world? But I already heard like 5 different things from you that kind of make it worth. It sounds like some of the weight, some of the pain, some of the rejection we hear a lot about.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there anything else that, you know, that's great about the movie world, or, you know, that maybe someone might not know out there? Yeah, that you love to do about it, that maybe, you know, something that's just out there that us normal folks don't know.
I don't know. Normal folks. I think personally, look, it's a tough grind. It's a tough battle at times. Absolutely. The rewards are fantastic. I have friends who are like super famous and very wealthy. The biggest thing that I enjoy, other than telling the story and reason why I'm an actor, is I would never knew the close friendship or family that you have with the people that you work with on set. And that always took me by surprise. And people would say, oh yeah, we're so close, we did this film together. But there's something that you both tackled something together. Then sometimes, especially like doing a play or a theater show that we would like travel the world with, that you learn so much about this person, and they become like a lifelong friend that you've gone through like something with, if that makes sense. And so that is I think one of the biggest draw cards with Jupiter's Legacy, that the crew of Ian playing Hutch, Jess and Umberly, we're still all really close. We are on, like, we talk all the time. We hang out in the park whenever because Jess and Umberly are here in Toronto, so we get to see each other. But that friendship, that camaraderie is intoxicating, and I can understand why people just like fall in love with their co-stars. But it's just something that you're like tackling this problem together, and you get to solve it, and then you get to see it. And especially with now, this has become so popular. You just like knowing someone, you're like, I saw you try and develop this character, and now it worked, and people are loving you for it. Like you feel this like such like not just a relief and kind of sense of like accomplishment with them and for them. So that for me is one of the biggest draw cards of being an actor.
You just melted my heart, Morgan. That was the sweetest thing I've ever heard in my life, man.
Yeah.
That's so cool, though. No, I totally get. Absolutely. I mean, you're tackling things together, and it's like I imagine the competitiveness of the industry makes it like when you finally do achieve a role and get it, like you don't want to let go of it, and like you're all feeling that same thing together. So I gotta imagine there's so many things that unify you guys. That's rad. I'm so cool you guys stay in touch outside.
Oh, absolutely. We talk all the time. So that's the great thing. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, we talk, but we are literally on like so many group chats with the whole cast. I mean, that's one of the only, I've worked on quite a few shows. This show definitely is, I've never had that camaraderie ever before. And I think because when we were on set, it's such a group mentality with all the stories coming together, but everyone went out of their way to be like, we would go out and like, you know, like go drinking and go to like this rec room, which is this huge party, like games place with the entire cast, which was just like, I've never experienced that type of thing before in my life. So it's insane.
Sounds like the dream, man. That's awesome. So happy for you. Hell yeah. So you have been on other shows. I saw you were on Supernatural as well. Is that accurate?
I was, yeah, in Vancouver. Yeah.
Very cool. So what do you have anything upcoming? Obviously season 2 of Jupiter's Legacy, but do you have any other projects upcoming that you're able to talk about, or?
Yeah. So, well, we don't know yet about, first of all, season 2, but we're hoping. We're really hoping.
I think it's a good chance. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Well, it's pretty. I mean, it's the most expensive show they shot in Toronto. So I always, in my mind, I'm like, oh, is it too expensive to them to renew? But I have a feeling it's positive. But I'm not gonna get overboard. Have you heard of a show, have you ever heard of a Canadian show called Letterkenny?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I just finished shooting an episode that will come out next year, though, unfortunately. But having an amazing time. I'm playing Australian in that. I don't ever play Australian for some reason. Jack Frost, and now this I'm playing Australian. But Letterkenny, I think, is so funny, and I don't know if a lot of people do watch. I think it has like, I would encourage everyone to give it a go because it is one of the best comedy shows out there, let alone Canadian TV. But yeah, I've got like I do a lot of movie of the weeks, some of those romantic comedies, and so I have a few of them coming out. I had one came out on Lifetime the other day, which was a lot of fun. So all those are coming out. So yeah, but I'm down to a few bigger TV shows at the moment, but I can't say anything at the moment. So
fair. Well,
vibes.
It's okay.
I'll
we
send
understand.
out some good vibes to you, man. Good luck
Thank
with that.
you.
That's awesome.
Taking it.
And Letterkenny, I fully support that. That show was hilarious, and goddamn, those guys can talk fast. I love it.
Oh my god, it is insane the amount of dialogue that we had to do in they just don't breathe. They just don't take. And it was you can
watch it over and over again and pick up different jokes as you go because it just happens so quickly. It's kind of like 30 Rock to me. Like,
yeah.
I
have
it.
to watch it with subtitles because I feel like it just goes too quickly.
I watch everything with subtitles.
Do you really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, because I don't want to miss anything, and I get criticized for it all the time. But it's just I'm used to it by now, you know.
I'm so used to it as well. But yeah, that's
awesome. Pretty great. So
right
are you watching anything great, any comic book series that you're besides Jupiter Legacy that you've seen or that you like dive into? Kind of like we've dived into Jupiter Legacy. I mean, I'll be honest, I watched that pretty quick. I don't really watch shows that way.
So did I.
I was intrigued, and I did not read the book or anything until after. I'm kind of feeling like I'm liking that setup better than we have in the past, where I get to kind of be surprised and the show but it sucked me in, and I watched it pretty quick. Obviously I work at home now, and I don't really work while Jupiter Legacy came out because I had to finish it.
So
So
that's a good thing. That's a
yeah,
really
it is a
good
great thing. Yeah. So are you watching anything? Or I mean, we always ask this question. We're just always curious if if other people watch comic book stuff as much as we do. Really,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, no, I love it all. I've watched all of Titans, The Boys, obsessed. I thought The Boys was I think it's so interesting. I love that superheroes
We love
aren't
The Boys.
heroes. It's like
Mhm.
they're dirty, it's gritty.
Yeah.
I think it was just one of the first times I'm like, oh, just because you have superpowers doesn't mean you're automatically a nice, good person who's going to save the world. You're like, this is like, of course, a lot. I just think what they do on that show is really interesting, and I'm excited for season 3 because I know they already shot that.
Mhm.
But I think Titans is actually I was surprised of how much I enjoyed Titans. Have you ever watched Titans?
If not,
Mm,
we
I
we
haven't.
usually, I'll be honest, CW stuff is kind of hard sometimes. I try to watch The Flash. I got through about season 3, but I have told that Titans is good, so it is on my list. So
It's on the darker side. So it's not
Okay.
your Flash or your Supergirl. It's not in that kind of thing. It's like it's telling the story of obviously Robin, but he also doesn't like Batman. He hates Batman. So it's like it's a chip on his shoulder. There's that kind of darker, grittier, kind of more realistic kind of way. And
Ooh.
I kind of think that's kind of cool. It's also shot here in Toronto, and I know a lot of people on it. So I think that also has a different investment to like support and watch your friends.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Doctor
like it.
Simon, I'm down for that.
Yeah, same here.
Like a little
Same
edge in my comic book shows,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Well,
always
Morgan,
fun.
it is. It makes it more real, and that's honestly all the questions we really have. But
Awesome.
most importantly, so say thanks again for coming on. This has been great, and
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
of course, and we love our listeners to be able to follow you. What kind of social media do you got out there? Where can they find your stuff?
Instagram and Twitter is Mr. Morgan David Jones, so it's nice and easy to find it. So someone else
Mr.
stole
Morgan
Morgan.
David Jones.
Well, someone stole Morgan David Jones, so I just like, okay.
Oh,
That was me. That was my bad.
That's-
I'm just a big
give it
fan.
back, would you?
I'm just a big fan. I'll see what I can do.
Right.
No, but thank you so much, Morgan. Pleasure meeting you, and hopefully,
It's
after
fun.
season 2 definitely comes out, we'd love to chat again about that season. That'd be great.
Yeah, reach out. We'll do it definitely. Same time.
Awesome, man.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Take
Thank
care,
you so
buddy.
much. Bye.